You've entered Interstellar Chronicles. Close your eyes and drift into another world, a place where stars whisper forgotten names, where time folds and destinies collide across galaxies. Your journey begins now. The human mechanic's ingenuity won him an unlikely prize. A fierce calorie warrior's heart HFY Sci-Fi story. The galaxy of 2473 stretched like a canvas of shattered glass, stars glinting through the haze of nebulae, their light caught and refracted by the crystalline hull of the calorie dreadnought Spear of Dawn. The ship was a living fortress, grown from biocrystalline matrices that pulsed with a rhythm like the heartbeat of a slumbering god. Its surface shimmered like a frozen sea under moonlight, each facet a testament to the Kalari's mastery of the cosmos. The air inside thrummed with the low hum of symbiotic machinery, conduits of crystal weaving through the walls, glowing with bioluminescent light that cast eerie shadows across the command chamber. The Kalari were the galaxy's apex, their dominion spanning 1,000 systems, their culture a monolith of strength. Physical prowess, martial honor, and unyielding discipline were their pillars, emotions of flaw to be purged through ritual and rigor. Their technology was symbiotic, armor and weapons grown from biocrystalline matrices that bonded with their scales, enhancing their formidable bodies. The ritual of bonding, a sacred trial, fused flesh and crystal, amplifying strength but binding warriors to the Dominion's will. Their society was stratified, warriors at the apex, engineers and scholars below, vassal species like the insectoid Vren traders, diminutive Tauri laborers, and elusive Zethri remnants at the fringes, tolerated only for utility. Commander Varric embodied this ideal, her 3-meter frame towering over her crew, her obsidian scales flecked with iridescent blue catching the light, her 6-fingered hands, each claw tipped with a faint shimmer of plasma, were clasped behind her back, her tail swaying with controlled precision. Her gold-slit pupil eyes surveyed the chamber, sharp and unyielding, a warrior forged in battle, tempered by centuries of tradition. In the center of the chamber stood a human, shackled and out of place. Elias Kane was small by calorie standards, barely reaching Vera's chest, his wiry frame clad in worn coveralls stained with engine grease. His dark hair was matted with sweat, his gray eyes darting across the alien faces, scaled, fanged, gleaming with disdain. The Kalari had intercepted his salvage ship, the Starling, a battered relic scavenging a derelict Zethri freighter gone dark decades ago. The Zethri, a civilization of scholars undone by their hubris, had left wrecks laced with unstable gravitic tech, treasures for scavengers like Elias. To the Kalari, he was an intruder, a Shelvier, a soft spark, fleeting and insignificant. Vera's voice cut through the hum, sharp as a plasma blade, her translator implant rendering her words in crisp English. "Speak, human. Why do you trespass in Kalari space?" Elias swallowed, his throat dry as the recycled air of his ship. "I didn't know it was yours," he said, his voice steady despite the chains. "I was salvaging scrap, circuits, power cells, stuff to keep my colony alive. The freighter was Zethri, dead for years. My logs will show I wasn't looking for trouble." Vera's tail lashed, a sharp crack against the crystalline floor. "Logs? Your kind always has excuses, scurrying in the shadows of our dominion, picking at the bones of better empires. You think your trinkets and toys make you worthy to stand here." The crew chuckled, a guttural sound echoing off the walls. Elias's jaw tightened, but he held her gaze. "I'm just trying to survive. My people on New Haven need those parks, generators, filters, air scrubbers. Without them, we choke." Vera tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. Survival was a Kalari virtue, etched into their culture through centuries of conquest. The Dominion had risen from the ashes of the Zethri Empire, which collapsed a millennium ago when its gravitic experiments tore their worlds apart. The Kalari claimed their territory, their crystalline ships symbols of dominance, their warriors revered as living blades. But humans? They were fragile, emotional, their lifespans a mere century compared to the Kalari's 300 years. Yet this one's gaze, steady, defiant, sparked curiosity. She waved a claw, dismissing the thought. Take him to the cells, she ordered. We will decide his fate later. As the guards dragged Elias away, his boots scuffing the smooth floor, he glanced back, his expression a mix of exhaustion and resolve. Vera felt a twinge, like a spark in the dark. She ignored it, turning to her console, its holographic displays flickering with star charts, patrol routes, and reports of Ren unrest in the sector. The Spear of Dawn had greater concerns, rival factions, vassal demands, and whispers of rebellion within her own crew. The galaxy was a crucible of ambition and fire. The Kalari Dominion's crystalline ships sliced through the void like living cathedrals, their empire built on conquest and discipline. The ritual of bonding was sacred, a trial of pain and will that fused warrior and crystal. Vera had undergone it at 16, her scales merging with the lattice, her senses sharpened to feel the ship's pulse as her own. It was a mark of status, a badge of honor, but also a chain. She was bound to the Spear of Dawn, to the Dominion, to ideals that defined her people. The ritual of clarity purged emotions, a meditative trial in a crystal chamber where warriors faced their fears, their minds stripped bare by the lattice's resonance. Vera had excelled, her heart hardened, her will unbreakable, but her curiosity lingered, a flaw her clan deemed dangerous. She had risen through the ranks, her victories etched in the crystal annals of her clan, the Tsan, known for unyielding loyalty. Her first battle, at 19, had been against the Iron Fang, a rival faction that sought to fracture the Dominion. She'd led a boarding party, her plasma blade carving through their drones, her armor amplifying her strength. The victory earned her command of the Spear of Dawn, but also enemies, warriors like Lieutenant Reeve, whose pale scales and sharp tongue masked ambition. Whispers followed Vera, her questions about vassal species, her reluctance to crush dissent with force, marked her as unconventional. Her mentor, Elder Kira, a scarred warrior with silver scales, had shaped her early years. Kira had fought in the Great Consolidation, a century-long war that unified the Kalari clans. Her lessons were harsh. Curiosity weakens the blade. Strength is all. Vera had nodded, but the words rang hollow when she saw Tkari laborers toiling in the shipyards, their small frames dwarfed by crystal scaffolds, or Vren traders bartering with cunning eyes. The galaxy was vast, its peoples varied, yet the Kalari saw only strength or weakness. Vera wondered if there was more, a thought she buried deep, lest it fracture her resolve. Humans were barely a footnote in Kalari annals. Scattered across fringe colonies, they clung to the galaxy's edges, their ships clunky, cobbled from relics of older empires. The Kalari called them Shelvier for their fleeting lives and fragile forms. Yet humans endured, driven by stubborn resilience. Their colonies, like New Haven, were patchwork, built on dust and hope, their technology a mix of ingenuity and desperation. New Haven was a windswept rock, its domes cracked but holding, its people bound by grit and dreams. The colony's heart was its market, a sprawl of stalls where scavengers traded Zethari circuits for Tari fabrics, where children like Lila ran through dust clouds, dreaming of the stars. Elias Kane was New Haven's lifeline, a mechanic who kept the generators humming, the air scrubbers running, the ships flying. The Starling was his home, its hull scarred from years of scavenging in unstable sectors, its engines patched with wire and will. Elias was no hero, just a man with a knack for fixing the unfixable, a quiet humor, and a heart that refused to quit. His sister, Lila, 16 and sharp as a plasma cutter, dreamed of becoming a pilot, her eyes bright with the stars she named each night. Every salvage run was for her, for their community, for the hope of a better life. Elias's life had been shaped by loss and resilience. At 12, he'd watched his parents die in a dome collapse, their hands still clutching the tools they'd used to repair New Haven's failing systems. He'd raised Lila, teaching her to strip circuits, to laugh in the face of despair. At 18, he'd met Jessa, a pilot with dark curls and a fearless grin, who taught him to navigate wrecks. They'd scavenged a Zethari cruiser together, dodging gravitic surges, Jessa's voice steady in his ear. "Trust your hands, Eli. They'd hauled back parts that kept New Haven's domes sealed for years, their laughter echoing in the Starling's cockpit. Jessa was gone now, lost to a pirate raid, her ship torn apart in a flash of plasma. Elias carried her lessons, her courage, in his bones. He carried Lila's dreams, too, her voice a beacon in the void. He remembered their nights stargazing, Lila pointing at the sky, naming stars she'd never reach. "You're like a roach, Eli," she teased, her freckled face grinning. "Nothing kills you." The memory warmed him, even in the cold of a calorie cell. In the cell, a cube of translucent crystal pulsing with the ship's energy. Elias sat cross-legged, working on a broken comms unit smuggled past the guards. It was a human model, its circuits fried but salvageable, scavenged from a wreck years ago. His hands moved with precision, stripping wires, rerouting connections by feel, the work grounding him in the alien dark. He hummed a melody from Earth's past, a song about love and loss under distant stars, a habit from long nights in the Starling's engine bay. The song reminded him of Lila, of Jessa, of promises kept. He saw Lila's face, freckled, grinning, her eyes bright with hope. He saw Jessa, her curls bouncing as she dodged debris. The comms unit flickered, a faint signal sparking to life. He whispered into it, "I'm okay, Lila. Keep dreaming. Tell New Haven I'll be back." He didn't know if it would reach the colony, light years away, but it was enough to try, a spark of hope in the void. The cell's door slid open with a hiss, and Vera stepped inside, her armor glowing faintly in the dim light. Elias froze, the comms unit slipping to the floor with a clatter. "Didn't expect a personal visit," he said, his voice light but cautious, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Vera's tail flicked, a subtle sign of irritation. "Your kind is predictable," she said, her voice low and resonant. "Always meddling with machines, as if they'll save you." She gestured to the comms unit with a claw. "What is it?" Elias picked it up, his fingers brushing the scarred casing. "Broken communicator. Figured I'd fix it. Keeps me busy." Vera's laugh was sharp, like the crack of breaking ice. "You are a prisoner, human. Your time belongs to us." Elias shrugged, a small, defiant gesture that made her scales shimmer faintly. "Time's all I've got right now. Might as well use it." She stepped closer, her shadow falling over him, her gold eyes studying him. The calluses on his hands, the faint scar across his knuckles from a wreck collapse, the way his fingers moved with quiet confidence. "You do not fear me," she said, her tone almost accusing. "I'm scared plenty," Elias admitted, meeting her gaze, his gray eyes steady, unguarded. "But fear doesn't fix anything. Work does." Vera felt a spark, sharper now, like a current running through her bio-crystalline armor. This human was no warrior, no diplomat, yet he spoke with a conviction that unsettled her. She turned to leave, her tail swaying, then paused at the threshold. "Your name, human." "Elias Kane," he said, his voice soft but clear. She hesitated, her claws flexing. Names were not shared lightly among the Kalari, a gesture reserved for equals or allies. Against her better judgment, she spoke. "Vera-san." Elias's smile widened, "Just a faction." "Nice to meet you, Vera." She left without another word, her tail lashing as she strode down the corridor. The spark lingered, a quiet challenge to everything she knew. She walked the crystalline halls, her armor humming faintly, her thoughts troubled. She passed Tory laborers polishing the conduits, their small hands deft but their eyes downcast. She passed Vren traders in the docking bay, their mandibles clicking as they bartered for crystal shards. The galaxy was vast, its peoples varied, yet the Kalari saw only strength or weakness. Elias's words echoed, "Work does." She pushed them away, but they clung, a melody she couldn't silence. Vera sought Elder Kira in the meditation chamber, a dome of crystal where the air hummed with resonance, the walls alive with shifting runes. Kira's silver scales glinted, her scars a map of battles won, her eyes piercing as she sat cross-legged before a crystal spire. "This human troubles you," Kira said, her voice stern. Before Vera could speak, Vera's tail stilled, her claws flexing. He is Shelvier, yet he is different. He does not bow, does not break. Kira's eyes narrowed, her scales darkening. Beware, Vera. Curiosity is a crack in the blade. He will shatter you. Strength is all. Vera nodded, but her heart was heavy, the spark growing brighter. She remembered her first ritual of clarity. At 17, the crystal chamber stripping her mind bare, forcing her to face her fears. Failure, weakness, the shadow of her clan's expectations. She had emerged stronger, her emotions burned away, but curiosity lingered, a flaw she could not purge. Elias's presence fanned it, a spark threatening to ignite. The Spear of Dawn faced a crisis that tested Vera's resolve. A rogue asteroid swarm, laced with unstable gravitic anomalies from Zethri experiments, struck during a routine patrol in the Valther sector, a region littered with the wrecks of the Zethri's failed ambitions. The anomalies disrupted the propulsion matrix, fracturing its crystalline conduits, the ship's heart. The Spear of Dawn began to drift, pulled inexorably toward the gravity well of a neutron star, its crushing embrace a death sentence for all aboard. Vera stood on the command deck, her claws digging into the console as reports flooded in, the holographic displays flickering with warnings. The Kalari engineers, trained in rigid protocols, struggled to adapt to the anomaly's chaotic energy. Their tools, designed for precision, faltered against the unpredictable surges, their scales dull with frustration. The crew was disciplined but rattled. Failure was not a concept they understood, and the prospect of it gnawed at their pride. Lieutenant Reeve, a warrior with pale scales and a sharp tongue, seized the moment to challenge Vera's leadership. His clan, the Vor, had long rivaled the Tsan, their ambition a constant thorn in the Dominion's unity. Abandon the lower decks, Reeve hissed, his tail lashing, his claws flexing. Focus on the core. Save the ship, not the weak. Vera's eyes flashed, her plasma blade humming faintly at her side. We abandon nothing, she said, her voice cold as crystal. Every deck, every warrior, is mine to protect. Reeve's scales darkened, his slit pupils narrowing, but he fell silent, his resentment simmering. He had allies among the crew, warriors who whispered of Vera's unconventional ways, her curiosity about vassal species, her reluctance to crush dissent with force. They saw weakness, and Reeve fed their doubts, his ambition a poison spreading through the ship. In the cells, Elias overheard the guards' tense whispers, their voices carrying through the crystal walls. He'd seen anomalies like these before, scavenging wrecks with Jessa in the unstable fringes of the Orion Arm. The Starling had danced through gravitic storms, its hull groaning but holding, Elias's hands steady as he patched its systems under pressure. He'd learned to think on his feet, to improvise where protocols failed, a skill born of necessity in a galaxy that didn't care if humans lived or died. He banged on the cell wall, the sound echoing, until a guard appeared, his scales dull with stress. I can help, Elias said, his voice firm. I've worked with gravitic tech. Let me see the engine. The guard laughed, a harsh bark, but relayed the message, more out of desperation than belief. Vera, her options dwindling as the neutron star loomed closer, its gravity tugging at the ship's frame, summoned him to the command deck. You claim you can fix what my engineers cannot, she asked, her voice thick with skepticism, her tail lashing sharply. Elias wiped sweat from his brow, his coveralls still stained from his earlier work on the comms unit. I don't claim anything, he said, meeting her gaze, his gray eyes steady. But I've got nothing to lose. Do you? Her eyes narrowed, gold slits glinting in the bioluminescent light, her scales shimmering with a mix of doubt and curiosity. She gestured to the engine bay, a vast chamber of pulsing crystal and humming energy, its walls alive with the ship's heartbeat. Prove your worth, Elias Kane, she said, her voice low, almost a challenge. Or die with us. Elias nodded, his heart pounding but his hands steady, the memory of Jess's voice in his ear. Trust your hands, Eli. He followed the guards, his boots echoing on the crystalline floor, the weight of 1,000 alien eyes on his back. The engine bay was a cathedral of light and sound, its crystalline conduits towering like the ribs of an ancient beast, each one pulsing with the ship's lifeblood. The propulsion matrix, a sphere of interwoven crystal strands, hung at the chamber's heart, its glow flickering erratically as gravitic anomalies tore at its structure. Elias stood before it, dwarfed by its scale, his human tools, a battered multi-tool, a coil of wire, a handheld scanner, looking absurdly primitive next to the Kalari's sleek instruments, which hummed with biocrystalline precision. The engineers watched with barely concealed disdain, their scales dull, their claws twitching. Reeves stood among them, his pale scales glinting with contempt, his tail lashing as he muttered to his allies. Elias ignored them, his focus on the matrix, his scanner humming as he traced the energy flows, muttering to himself as he cross-referenced the readings with his instincts. "It's not just the anomalies," he said, more to himself than the others. "The matrix is fighting itself. Too rigid. You've got to let it flex." Reeve growled, stepping forward, his claws flexing. "Our technology is perfect," he said, his voice dripping with scorn. "It does not flex. You insult our craft, Chelvier." Elias glanced up, unfazed, his gray eyes steady. "Perfect's great until it breaks," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You're dealing with chaos here. Zethary Tech doesn't play by your rules. Adapt or crash." Reeves' tail lashed, his scales darkening, but Vera, observing from the command platform above, raised a claw to silence him. "Let him work," she said, her voice a low rumble, her eyes tracking Elias's every move. Her tail swayed slowly, a sign of curiosity, her scales shimmering faintly. Reeves stepped back, his claws twitching, his resentment a palpable force. Elias worked for hours, jury-rigging human tools with Kalari tech, rerouting energy flows with a mix of intuition and experience. His hands were steady, his mind racing through calculations no Kalari would attempt without protocol. He remembered a wreck with Jessa, a Zethary cruiser caught in a gravitic storm, its core pulsing like this one, threatening to tear the ship apart. They'd bypassed its conduits with a patchwork of wire and hope. Jessa's voice steady in his ear. "Trust your hands, Eli." The memory steadied him now, his fingers moving with a rhythm born of years in the Starling's engine bay. He spoke to the engineers, not with arrogance but with patience, explaining his methods in simple terms. "See this conduit?" he said to Core, a young engineer with dark scales, who hovered nearby, his claws twitching with uncertainty. "It's overloaded. If we bypass it here, let the energy spread, it'll stabilize." Core hesitated, his slit pupils narrowing, then nodded, his claws adjusting the controls as Elias directed. The other engineers watched, their scales shifting from dull to faintly luminescent, a sign of grudging respect. Atari technician, a small creature with delicate limbs and large, luminous eyes, approached, offering a crystal shard to reinforce the bypass. Elias nodded, surprised but grateful, incorporating the shard into his patchwork. The Tari, named Sren, spoke in a soft, melodic voice. "Your hands are deft, human, like ours." Elias smiled, a spark of connection in the alien dark. "Thanks, Sren. Let's keep this beast alive." Reeves stood apart, his eyes narrow, his tail still, his silence heavy with contempt. Elias worked through the night cycle, sweat beading on his forehead, his hands moving with a rhythm born of necessity. He thought of Lila, of her dreams, of the generators he'd fixed to keep New Haven's air clean. He thought of Jessa, her laughter echoing in the void. He thought of Vera, her gold eyes watching from above, a spark of something new in their depths. The Matrix's pulse began to steady, its glow returning to a rhythmic hum. Core adjusted a final conduit, his claws precise, and the Matrix flared, its light steady and strong, the chamber filled with a low, resonant hum. Elias collapsed against a conduit, exhausted but grinning, his shoulder aching from the day's work. "She's purring again," he said, patting the Matrix like a living thing. "Told you she just needed a little love." Kor extended a claw, a gesture of acknowledgement among the Kalari, his scales shimmering with respect. "You are not what I expected, human," he said, his voice rough but sincere. Sren, the Tari, bowed slightly, her luminous eyes bright. "You honor us with your skill," she said. The other engineers murmured, their scales shimmering, their disdain giving way to curiosity. Reeve's tail lashed, his claws flexing, but he said nothing, his silence a storm waiting to break. Vera descended from the platform, her armor glinting in the restored light, her tail swaying slowly, a sign of approval. "You have skill," she said, her voice measured but softer than before, her gold eyes locking onto Elias's. "But skill is not strength." Elias met her gaze, his grin fading to something quieter, more earnest. "Strength's not just muscles or claws, Vera," he said, his voice steady. "It's keeping going when everything says you shouldn't. It's fixing what's broken, for the people who need you." Her scales shimmered faintly, a Kalari sign of unease, or perhaps something deeper. She turned away, but not before Elias caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes, a crack in the armor of her certainty. She returned to the command deck, her thoughts troubled, her heart a battleground of duty and curiosity. The human had done what her engineers could not, defying the rigid protocols that defined Kalari engineering. She saw his hands in her mind, calloused and steady, his gray eyes unflinching. She heard his song, that haunting melody of love and loss, and it stirred something she couldn't name, a spark threatening to ignite. The Kalari were not a people of introspection. Their culture was a blade, sharp and unyielding, forged in the fires of conquest. The ritual of clarity purged emotions, forcing warriors to face their fears in a crystal chamber, their minds stripped bare. The ritual of bonding fused them to their armor, a symbiotic bond that amplified strength but demanded loyalty. Vera had excelled in both, her heart hardened, her will unbreakable. At 19, she'd faced the Iron Fang, her plasma blade carving through their drones, her armor amplifying her strength. At 25, she'd quelled a Ren uprising, her diplomacy as sharp as her blade, earning her command of the Spear of Dawn. Yet Elias Kane unsettled her. He was no warrior, no noble, yet he carried himself with a quiet dignity that lingered in her thoughts like a melody she couldn't shake. She saw him in her mind's eye, his calloused hands, his steady gaze, the way he hummed the human song, its notes weaving through her soul. It was a song of loss, of love, of a people who clung to hope despite their fragility. She envied it, though she'd never admit it, not even to herself. Elias, back in his cell, lay on the crystal floor, the comms unit fixed, its signal faint but alive, a whisper to New Haven that might never reach Lila. He thought of her, of Jessa, of the colony's cracked domes and stubborn hope. He thought of Vera, her gold eyes, her strength masking something softer, a spark of curiosity that mirrored his own. He wondered what she'd think of New Haven, of its dusty plains, its flickering stars, its people who laughed in the face of despair. He saw her in his mind, towering and fierce, yet hesitant, her claw brushing his arm, a gesture that lingered like a promise. The memory warmed him, a spark in the cold. He hummed the old song, its notes carrying memories of Lila's laughter, Jessa's courage, the life he'd left behind. The Spear of Dawn was a marvel, its crystal walls alive with energy, but it was not home. Home was New Haven, Lila's dreams, the people who depended on him. Vera summoned him to her quarters, a stark space of crystal and steel, its walls etched with runes that glowed faintly in the dark. She stood by a viewport, the stars stretching beyond like an endless sea, their light casting shadows across her scales. Elias entered, his shoulders stiff from the day's work, his coveralls still smeared with grease, the faint burn of the engine bay's heat lingering on his skin. "Why do you fight so hard to prove yourself?" Vera asked, her voice softer than he'd heard before, her gaze fixed on the stars, as if they held answers she couldn't find. Elias leaned against the wall, his hands in his pockets, his gray eyes steady. "I'm not proving anything to you," he said, his voice calm but firm. I'm just me. I fix things. I help where I can. That's enough. She turned, her tail still, her eyes searching his, gold slits glinting in the dim light. Your kind is weak. You die so easily. Yet you stand here unafraid. Elias's voice was low, honest, a trace of a smile tugging at his lips. I'm afraid, scared out of my mind, if I'm honest. But I've got people back home. Lila, my sister, a crew, folks on New Haven who need me to keep the lights on, the air clean. If I give up, what happens to them? Vera stepped closer, her height casting a shadow over him, her scales shimmering faintly. You fight for others, not yourself, she said, her voice almost a whisper, as if the words were foreign to her. Elias nodded, his eyes steady, unguarded. Isn't that what strength is? Her worldview cracked, a fissure in the crystal of her being. The Kalari fought for honor, for dominion, for the glory of their empire, their victories etched in crystal, their names immortalized in the annals of their clans. This human fought for connection, for love, for a sister he might never see again, for a colony that clung to life on a barren rock. She reached out, her claw brushing his arm, a gesture of curiosity, not threat, her scales cool against his skin. Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, a small, warm thing that made her heart stutter, a rhythm she couldn't name. You are perplexing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the word heavy with something new. Likewise, Elias replied, his smile widening, a spark of humor in his eyes. But I'm starting to like it. Vera's scales shimmered, a faint glow of unease, or perhaps something deeper, something forbidden. She turned back to the viewport, her tail swaying slowly, her claws flexing as if to ground herself. Your song, she said, almost to herself, the words tentative. What is it? Elias hesitated, his fingers brushing the comms unit in his pocket, its weight a reminder of home. An old human tune, he said, his voice soft, about love, loss, holding on to what matters. My sister used to sing it back on New Haven. We'd sit under the stars, her voice carrying over the dust. It's home. Vera's eyes flickered, a spark of understanding, a crack in her armor. It is beautiful, she said, the word foreign on her tongue, a concept the Kalari rarely acknowledged. Elias chuckled, a low, warm sound that filled the silence. Yeah, humans are good at that, I guess. Finding beauty in the mess. Vera's tail swayed, a sign of amusement, her scales shimmering brighter. She stepped closer, her claw hovering near his shoulder, then falling away, as if unsure of its place. You're home, she said. Tell me of it. Elias leaned back, his eyes distant, a smile tugging at his lips. New Haven's a rock mostly, dusty, cracked domes, air scrubbers that break every other week. But it's ours. The market's alive. Kids running through stalls, traders bartering Zethri circuits for Tari fabrics. Lila, my sister, she's the heart of it. 16, sharp as a blade, dreams of flying. She names the stars, you know? Points at them like they're hers to claim. He paused, his voice softening. It's not much, but it's enough. It's worth fighting for. Vera's scales shimmered, her gold eyes locked on his. A spark of something new, admiration, perhaps, or envy. You fight for a dream, she said, her voice low. We fight for glory. Elias's smile faded, his eyes steady. Glory's nice, but dreams keep you warm at night. Vera's tail stilled, her breath catching. The spark between them a tangible force, a light in the dark. The spear of dawn was not yet safe. The Vren, a vassal species of insectoid traders with multifaceted eyes and chittering voices, escalated their demands, sensing the ship's vulnerability after the asteroid crisis. Their envoy, a towering creature named Xeth, met Vera on the command deck, its mandibles clicking, its carapace glinting under the bioluminescent light. Your ship is weak, Xeth said, its voice a harsh buzz. Pay tribute, crystal shards, tech, where we inform the Iron Fong of your drift. Vera's tail lashed, her claws flexing, her plasma blade humming faintly at her side. "The Dominion bows to no one," she said, her voice cold as crystal, her scales darkening with controlled fury. "Leave or face our blades." Xetha's eyes glittered, its mandibles twitching, but it retreated, its threat hanging heavy in the air. Reeve seized the moment, his pale scales glinting as he stepped forward. "We should strike first," he hissed, his tail lashing. "The Vren are nothing. Crush them. Show our strength." Vera's eyes flashed, her voice sharp. "We do not start wars. We end them. Focus on repairs." Reeve, his scales darkened, his claws twitching, his resentment a poison spreading through the crew. The Vren's threat was not idle. They ambushed a Kalari supply convoy in the sector, their sleek, organic ships, grown from chitin and biotech, disabling a transport with EMP pulses. Vera led a counterstrike, the Spear of Dawn diving into the fray, its crystalline hull shimmering as plasma lances fired. She fought on the command deck, her orders precise, her blade at the ready, her armor amplifying her strength. The Vren ships were fast, their biotech hulls regenerating, but the Kalari's discipline prevailed, their plasma lances cutting through chitin. Elias, still in the engine bay, worked with Kor and Sren to maintain the matrix, his hands steady despite the ship's tremors. He rigged a power surge to boost the shields, his human ingenuity complementing the Kalari's precision. The Vren retreated, their ships limping away, but the skirmish left the Spear of Dawn battered, its crew tense, Reeve's whispers growing louder. The Iron Fang, a rival Kalari faction, sensed weakness and struck without warning. Their ships, sleeker, grown from darker crystal, emerged from the void, their plasma lances slicing through the Spear of Dawn's shields. Vera led her warriors, her plasma blade flashing as she cut through enemy drones in the corridors, her armor humming, her senses sharp. Reeve fought beside her, his loyalty fraying, his eyes burning with ambition. The crew fought with disciplined fury, but the Iron Fang were relentless, their boarding pods breaching the hull in a dozen places. Elias, now freed and given a temporary role in the engine bay, was caught in the battle. Kor handed him a salvaged plasma rifle, its weight unfamiliar in his hands. "Stay behind me, human," Kor said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "I can handle myself," Elias replied, checking the rifle's charge, his heart pounding but his hands steady. He wasn't a soldier, but he'd survived pirate raids with Jessa, dodging plasma fire in crumbling wrecks. He knew how to keep his head down and think fast. The lower decks became a battlefield, Iron Fang drones swarming through the breaches, their plasma claws slashing through crystal bulkheads. Elias and Kor fought side by side, disabling pods with makeshift EMPs cobbled together from spare parts. Sren, the Tari technician, joined them, her small hands deft as she rerouted power to seal breaches. Elias's hands shook, but his mind was clear, his instincts honed from years of scavenging. He remembered Jess's voice, steady in his ear. "Trust your hands, Eli." He remembered Lila's teasing, "Nothing kills you." The drones were fast, but Elias was faster, his human instincts defying the Kalari's rigid tactics. He rigged a power cell to overload, sending a pulse that disabled a cluster of drones, their circuits frying in a shower of sparks. Kor's scales shimmered with surprise. "You fight like a Kalari," he said, his voice rough. Elias grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Nah, I fight like a human." When a drone pinned Kor against a bulkhead, its plasma claws inches from his throat, Elias acted without thinking. He threw himself between them, taking a glancing burn to his shoulder, pain searing through him white-hot. He fired back, the rifle's recoil jarring his bones, until the drone collapsed in a shower of sparks. Kor staggered to his feet, his scales dull with shock. "You saved me," he said, his voice rough with gratitude. Elias grinned through the pain, his shoulder burning. "Couldn't let you hog all the glory." Srena's luminous eyes widened, her small hands trembling as she helped Elias to his feet. "You are brave human," she said, her voice melodic. Vera saw it all from the command deck's feed. Her claws gripping the console, her breath catching. This HFY had risked his life for one of her own. For a Tory vassal. Her scales shimmered with an emotion she couldn't name. Fear, not for herself, but for him. She roared in order to reinforce the lower decks, her voice shaking with something new, her heart a battleground. Reeves seized the moment to challenge her, stepping forward on the command deck, his pale scales glinting, his tail lashing. "You trust a human over your own?" he hissed, his claws flexing, his voice loud enough for the crew to hear. "You weaken us, Vera. Your curiosity blinds you." Vera's eyes flashed, her plasma blade humming in her hand, her scales darkening with controlled fury. "You question me now in battle?" she said, her voice cold as crystal. "Stand down, Reeve, or face my blade." He bared his fangs, his slit pupils narrowing, but he stepped back, his resentment a poison spreading through the crew. The battle raged on, the spear of Dawn's shields faltering under the Iron Fang's relentless assault. Vera fought her way to the breach points, her blade a blur, her armor amplifying her strength, her senses sharp enough to feel the ship's pain as her own. Elias, in the lower decks, worked with Core and Sren to seal a hull breach, rigging a crystal panel with human wire and calorie sealant. His shoulder burning but his hand steady. He thought of Lila, of Jessa, of the people who needed him to keep going. The Iron Fang's drones fell, their ships retreating into the void, the Spear of Dawn limping on, its crew battered but alive. In the aftermath, Vera ordered a calorie festival to honor the victory, a rare event aboard the Spear of Dawn. The Great Hall was transformed, its crystal walls pulsing with vibrant light, runes shifting to depict the Dominion's triumphs. Warriors gathered, their armor polished, their scales shimmering, their tails swaying in rhythmic dances that echoed ancient battles. Tory laborers served crystal-infused drinks, their small hands deft, while Vren traders, invited as a diplomatic gesture, watched from the sidelines, their mandibles clicking. Elias was invited, a guest among warriors, his presence sparking murmurs. He stood awkwardly, his coveralls out of place among the gleaming armor, but Core and Sren flanked him, their support a silent defiance of Reeves' glares. Vera presided, her armor adorned with ceremonial shards, her voice ringing as she recounted the battle, praising Core's courage, Sren's skill, and Elias's ingenuity. The crew's scales shimmered, their murmurs softening, but Reeves' faction remained dark, their tales still. During the festival, Vera pulled Elias aside, leading him to a balcony overlooking the ship's crystalline core, its pulse a low, resonant hum. The stars stretched beyond, a sea of light and shadow. "You fought well," she said, her voice soft, her gold eyes locked on his. "You saved my people." Elias shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just doing what I do, fixing things, helping out." Vera's tail swayed, a sign of amusement, her scales shimmering. "You are more than you claim," she said, her voice low. "You see beauty in the mists, as you say. I envy that." Elias's smile widened, his gray eyes warm. "You've got beauty here, Vera. This ship, your people, you. It's just a different kind." Her scales shimmered brighter, her breath catching, a spark igniting between them. She reached out, her claw brushing his hand, a gesture of trust, of something more. Elias didn't pull away, his fingers curling slightly, a silent promise. The moment was broken by Reeves' voice, sharp and accusing, from the hole. "This human taints our victory," he roared, his pale scales glinting, his claws flexing. Vera's judgment falters. The crew fell silent, their scales darkening, their tails still. Vera's eyes flashed, her blade humming as she stepped back into the hole, Elias at her side. "Elias Kane saved this ship," she said, her voice cold, her tail lashing. "You, Reeve, sow discord when we need unity. Stand down or face the ritual of judgment." Reeve's scales darkened, his claws twitching, but Core and others stepped forward, their scales shimmering with support for Vera. Reeve backed down, his eyes burning, his mutiny delayed but not defeated. In the medbay, Elias sat on a crystal bench, his shoulder bandaged, his face pale but calm, the burn from the battle a dull ache. Vera entered, her armor dented, her scales dull with exhaustion, her tail still. She stood over him, her eyes locked on his. "You could have died," she said, her voice low, almost accusing. "Worth it," Elias replied, his voice hoarse but steady. "Kor's alive. Srenes alive. You're alive. That's enough." Vera knelt, bringing her face level with his, her claws flexing as if fighting an urge to reach out. "You are not weak," she said, the words heavy with realization. "You are impossible." Elias chuckled, wincing at the pain, his gray eyes warm. "I'm just a guy, Vera, but I'm glad you're starting to see it." She hesitated, then pressed her forehead to his, a calorie gesture of trust, of intimacy, rare even among her kind. Her scales were coal against his skin, her breath warm, a spark igniting in the quiet. "Elias Kane," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You have broken me." He reached up, his hand brushing her cheek, her scales smooth under his fingers. "Nah," he said softly, a smile tugging at his lips. "You're not broken. You're just starting to shine." They stayed like that, human and Kalari, the galaxy's vastness forgotten in the quiet space between them, a bond forged in fire and trust. The spear of dawn limped toward Kalari Prime, its crystal spires piercing the clouds of a world forged for warriors. Vera faced a new challenge. Reeves' descent had grown into a full-blown mutiny. He rallied a faction of warriors, their scales dark with discontent, accusing Vera of weakness for trusting a human. In the ship's council chamber, a smaller version of the Grand Hall, Vera confronted him, her blade at the ready, her armor humming. "You betray the Dominion," she said, her voice cold as crystal. Reeves' claws flexed, his pale scales glinting. "You betray it, Vera. You let a Shelvier cloud your judgment, weaken our blade." Kor stepped forward, his dark scales shimmering. "The human saved us. You would have let us drift to our deaths." Sren, the Tari, spoke, her voice melodic but firm. "Elias Kane is no Shelvier. He is ally." The crew was divided, but Vera's authority held, her blade a silent threat. Reeve backed down, his eyes burning, his mutiny quelled for now, but his ambition a shadow over the ship. Vera declared Elias a guest, not a prisoner, a decision that sparked murmurs among the crew. Kor, Sren, and others who'd fought beside him stood by her, their respect earned by his actions. The Kalari Council summoned Vera and Elias to the Grand Hall, a cavern of crystal and light where the Empire's fate was decided. The hall was a marvel, its walls alive with shifting runes, its air thick with the weight of history. The council, 12 warriors clad in crystalline armor, sat on thrones carved from the same material, their eyes glinting like stars. Reeve stood among them, his voice sharp, his pale scales stark against the council's darker hues. "This human is a liability," he said, his tail lashing. Vera's judgment falters, her curiosity a weakness. Vera's tail lashed, her claws flexing, her voice ringing through the hall. "Elias Kane saved this ship," she said, her hand resting on his shoulder. A silent claim that silenced the council's whispers. "He faced chaos and prevailed, where others faltered. He is no liability. He is strength." Elias stepped forward, his heart pounding, his coveralls out of place among the gleaming armor, but his voice steady, his gray eyes unflinching. "Humans aren't strong like you," he said, facing the council's piercing gazes. "We're not big or fast or tough. We break, we bleed, we die too soon. But we've got something else. Call it stubbornness. Call it hope. We keep going. For each other. For the people we love. That's what makes us." He thought of Lila, her laughter echoing across New Haven's dusty plains, her dreams of the stars. He thought of Jessa, her courage in the face of danger, her voice in his ear. He thought of Vera, her gold eyes a spark in his soul, her strength a mirror to his own. "I didn't save your ship for glory," he said, his voice soft but clear. I did it because it was right. Because Kor, Sren, Vera, they're worth saving. That's what humans do. We hold on. We fix what's broken. We find beauty in the mess. The council was silent, their scales shimmering in thought, the runes on the walls pulsing with their deliberation. The High Speaker, an ancient warrior named Zoran, his scars crisscrossing his scales like a map of the Dominion's wars, spoke, his voice resonant as crystal. You are no warrior, Elias Kane, yet you have saved our own, he said, his gold eyes piercing. You speak of hope, of connection, of a strength we do not know. We grant you safe passage and a tentative alliance with your colonies. Let this spark grow or let it fade. The choice is yours. Reeves' scales darkened, his claws twitching, but he was outvoted, his dissent silenced by the council's will. Vera's tail swayed, a sign of triumph, her scales shimmering with pride, her hand still on Elias's shoulder, a bond unspoken but unbreakable. Outside the hole, under the spires of Calorie Prime, Vera pulled Elias aside, the stars burning above, a reminder of the galaxy's vastness. The air was cool, the spires humming faintly, their light casting shadows across her scales. You have changed everything, she said, her voice soft, her gold eyes bright with something new. Hope, perhaps, or love. Elias grinned, his hand finding hers, human skin against calorie scales, a warmth that defied the cold of the void. You changed me too, Vera, he said, his voice steady, his gray eyes warm. Guess we're both a little impossible now. She laughed, a sound like crystal chiming, a melody that echoed his own, and leaned closer, her breath warm against his cheek. Stay with me, she said, the words a challenge and a plea, her scales shimmering brighter than the stars. Elias's smile softened, his fingers tightening around hers. For a while, he said, his voice soft but firm. But I've got a sister to get back to. Come with me sometime. See what humans are really made of. Vera's tail swayed, a sign of amusement, her eyes glinting with a spark of adventure. Perhaps I will, Elias Kane, she said, her voice a promise. Perhaps I will. And so, the tale of Elias Kane and Veritson became a whisper across the stars. A story of a human who showed a warrior what strength truly meant, and a warrior who learned to love a spark that refused to fade. Their bond, fragile yet unbreakable, was a bridge between worlds, a promise that even in a galaxy of fire and steel, the smallest light could change everything. Elias returned to New Haven, to Lila's hug and 1,000 questions about the Calorie warrior who'd stolen his heart, her laughter echoing across the dusty plains. Just as memory lingered, a spark of courage that guided him home. Vera, too, carried him in her soul, a light that burned brighter than any star, her blade sharper for the hope he'd kindled. The Calorie began to look at humans differently, their disdain giving way to curiosity, to respect. Human colonies, once ignored, found new allies in the void, their trade routes guarded by crystalline ships. The Vren, chastened by the Dominion's strength, retreated to their markets, their threats silenced. Reeves' mutiny faded, his ambition no match for Vera's resolve, his clan humbled by the council's verdict. Sren, the Tari, carried Elias's story to her people, a spark of hope for vassal kind. The galaxy was vast, cold, unforgiving, but their spark had ignited, and its fire would burn for generations, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of a human and a warrior who dared to see each other, to find beauty in the mess, to hold on to what mattered most.